all these cities, like they're all destroyed. All these villages are destroyed. Like we're talking about mass scale rampages, property destruction. This is literally what happened, okay? This is what happened. Over 400. These things don't exist anymore, right? They're history. They're done. There was an actual population transfer. There's no way to establish a demographically pure Israel, if by that you mean a predominantly Jewish state, without this happening. You don't have to ensconce transfer under law. You could just do it. Especially under the kind of confusion of war, which ends only in 1949. Was that an ethnic cleansing? Think about how you would answer that question a century from now. Think about how you would answer that question when it comes to Native Americans. It's not very controversial now, is it? To the extent that it still is kind of controversial, it's, America has like an interest in, not accepting that they committed a genocide, not accepting that they owe something to Native Americans, right? Was this an ethnic cleansing? This is controversial to say. My feeling is it's controversial to say, not because it's actually truly historically controversial. It's controversial to say because, Israel is ascended. It's a great power. Today, it's controversial to say that about an American ally, right? To say that they engage in ethnic cleansing. And, you have to understand what academia in fact is, right? Academia will have its own set of mini cottage industries that are there to, they get grants, right? They get funded by the powers that be, right? They get funded by the status quo. I think this is probably the best explanation why historically, right, this is still considered controversial to call the ethnic cleansing of Palestinians in fact an ethnic cleansing. So this is again from Wikipedia, the concept of transfer in Zionism. So the question is what did Zionists in fact intend, right? What did they intend from the native Palestinian Arab population, or what did they intend to happen to them? And we actually have a rich documentary record, even to this day. We have Israeli politicians talking about a greater Israel, right? Netanyahu clearly wants a greater Israel, right? He wants to annex the settlements, right? And more land for that matter. So the discussion of the idea of transfer in political Zionism became popular beginning in the 1980s when Israel declassified documents pertaining to the Arab-Israeli war. And the so-called new historians, people like Benny Morris, people like Avi Shlaim, new historians are those that are there to, they're more liberal, I guess, although Benny Morris has become a kind of crazy right winger. He doesn't disavow his books, but when he goes on Israeli media now, or American media for that matter, he mischaracterizes even his own early books. At the time, right, we have this new historians, they're publishing new stuff about the conflict. The Zionist concept of transfer was cited by Palestinian authors such as Nur Masalha and Walid Khalidi to support their argument that the Zionist Yishuv followed an expulsion policy, and echoed by a range of Israeli authors, including Simons and Floppin. Other Israeli historians, such as Benny Morris, reject the idea that transfer thinking led to a political expulsion policy as such, but they explained that the idea of transfer was endorsed in practice by mainstream Zionist leaders, particularly David Ben-Gurion. Critics of the transfer principle theory cite addresses by the Zionist leadership that publicly preached coexistence with the Arabs, but in private put forward their own plans or gave support to plans involving the transfer of Arabs from Palestine. So this is a big thing, right? From the very beginning, Zionists and David Ben-Gurion, they want to couch everything in the language of international law and consensus. And then privately, it's let's do a population transfer. Let's, how do we deal with this problem of native Palestinians, right? They're gonna be a problem in terms of an ethnically pure Jewish state. The idea that transfer ideology contributed to the Exodus was first brought up by several Palestinian authors and supported by Erskine Childers in his 1971 article, The Wordless Wish. This was referred to the idea to support his idea that the Yishuv followed an expulsion policy in April and May of 1948. In the 80s, historian Benny Morris became the most well-known advocate of the existence of the transfer idea. According to Morris, while not discounting other reasons for the Exodus, the transfer principle theory suggests that this prevalent attitude of transfer is what made it easy for the Jewish population to accept it and for local Haganah and IDF commanders to resort to various means of expelling the Arab population. Haganah was kind of like, I guess, the pre-IDF, like, paramilitary wing. They were funded and they were armed explicitly by Britain. So he also notes that the attempt to achieve a demographic shift through Aliyah, Jewish immigration to the land of Israel, had not been successful, right? Because again, I mean, even in the 1947 partition plan, I mean, within like a decade, they would have been outnumbered. Jews would have been outnumbered already, right? As a result, some Zionist leaders adopted the transfer of a large Arab population as the only viable solution. Morris also points out that if Zionist support for transfer really is unambiguous, the connection between that support and what actually happened during the war is far more tenuous, Arab propagandists, it's a typo, will allow. To this he adds that from, quote, from April 1948, Ben-Gurion is projecting a message of transfer. There is no explicit order of his in writing, there is no orderly comprehensive policy, but there is an atmosphere of population transfer. Again, keep in mind that during this time, we got tons of people fleeing, and just people feeling like this is not my country anymore. The transfer idea is in the air. The entire leadership understands that this is the idea, no doubt. The officer corps understands what is required of them. Under Ben-Gurion, a consensus of transfer is created. And I just want you guys to really take a look at this map, okay? Without even knowing anything else about it. This is the map of modern day Israel. Every little dot that you see here, there's over 400 of these on this map. Every single dot that you see here is a Palestinian village or city. If you look at a modern map of Israel today, it looks like the exact opposite now. All these red dots now have shifted to the West Bank, to this little thing here called like the Gaza Strip. Everything that is a red dot here, it is now just, Jewish land, right? It is now like Israel proper. Like literally what happened was, all these people that were living there, they were pushed. Either they ended up in Jordan, right? They ended up maybe in some other country, or they ended up in Gaza or the West Bank. All these cities, like they're all destroyed. All these villages are destroyed. Like we're talking about mass scale rampages, property destruction. This is literally what happened, okay? This is what happened. Over 400. These things don't exist anymore, right? They're history. They're done. There was an actual population transfer. There's no way to establish a demographically pure Israel, if by that you mean a predominantly Jewish state, without this happening. You don't have to ensconce transfer under law. You could just do it, especially like under the kind of confusion of war, which ends only in 1949. And by which you suddenly have like 22% extra land because like, oh, that's where the armies were conquered. That happened. Okay, that actually happened. All of this was transferred. So was that an ethnic cleansing? Think about how you would answer that question a century from now. Think about how you would answer that question when it comes to Native Americans. It's not very controversial now, is it? To the extent that it still is kind of controversial, it's, America has like an interest in not accepting that they committed a genocide, not accepting that they owe something to Native Americans, right? Just like Israel now, because this is such recent history, because those refugees, they're still alive, they still exist. There's a vested interest in pretending like that didn't happen. Anybody that says there wasn't a population transfer, show them this fucking map. This was all Arab territory.